Hi, this is Tom Eschen, the host of this Power in Politics podcast. The conversation about the issues impacting you the most with the people making the decisions that impact you the most, asking them the tough questions to hold them accountable. Today, we speak with Elise Stefanik, the highest-ranking female Republican in Congress. The North Country Congresswoman meets us at the U.S. Capitol on location to discuss everything from Donald Trump's campaign to Kamala Harris's campaign at that as well. We also talk about immigration, gun laws, and much, much more. Thanks for tuning in, and make sure to subscribe to wherever you get your podcasts, or you can watch the video on our YouTube page, CBS 6 Albany. So we are now here with Congresswoman Elise Stefanik. Thank you so much for joining us, Congresswoman. I appreciate your time.
Glad to be here.
Just coming out of the hearing with former Governor Andrew Cuomo, from what you heard today, what is your reaction to what he said? Were you surprised at all?
I was not surprised. Unfortunately, Governor Cuomo continues to point fingers at anybody but himself. And what the investigation, which was a bipartisan investigation, what it found was that he personally and his senior staff wrote, directed, and executed the directive on March 25th that led to the nursing home crisis, which ultimately killed over 15,000 vulnerable seniors. And families had been advocating for years at this point to get accountability and transparency, but most importantly, to make sure it never happens again. And Governor Cuomo refuses to answer honestly and wants to blame everybody else except for himself. He also has smeared these families repeatedly. All the members of Congress represent families who have lost loved ones. We've talked to them as our constituents. So this was a long time coming. It was very important, and it's my job as a representative to hold him accountable, and I did so today.
I know you had an exchange with him a few months ago about apologizing. I think he sort of apologized today. It wasn't an apology to you, to the families and those that were that died in this.
I did ask him that he needs to look the families in the eye and apologize and not just do it flippantly at the start of a hearing for PR purposes, and he failed to do that. This is a former governor, who attacked these families, who attacked their political affiliation, and frankly, it's Democrats, Republicans, Independents who lost loved ones. It is not partisan, and the governor, his staff attacked them. He owes them a long overdue apology, and it needs to be much more than we heard today.
He pointed a lot at the Trump administration, and I believe he also asked you to apologize for your support of the administration in their guidance and communication back when the pandemic began, saying that led to lost lives. I'll ask the same question I guess he did a few months ago. Would you apologize for that?
Absolutely not, because the CMS and CDC guidance were crystal clear that they should not allow nursing homes that were unable to care for COVID-positive patients. And Governor Cuomo's executive action, the directive on March 25th, did not abide by CMS and CDC guidance. That is what Deborah Birx testified in her closed-door deposition. So as much as Governor Cuomo wants to point fingers elsewhere, this is one of the many scandals and catastrophes that Governor Cuomo oversaw. And it's one of the reasons, and I said in the hearing, he is a disgraced former governor, and he's not going to be elected ever again.
Is that what you want out of this, him not to hold office ever again? What do you want as a result of what he had to say today moving forward?
What I want as a result is answers for the families, and that's what I said at the top of my question to Governor Cuomo, is this is about those families, getting them the answers they deserve, and then importantly, understanding the lessons learned, that the directive on March 25th was not based on CMS CDC guidance, so that in the future we're protecting our most vulnerable, who are our seniors. This is important to my district, for example. Not only do I represent constituents, but I have the highest number of seniors population-wise in my congressional district, so a very elderly district, and these policies impact districts that have that huge percentage of elderly population. So it hits home in my district just like it impacts families who lost their loved ones.
Let's pivot now to the debate coming up later on tonight, the only one between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. What kind of different challenge could you say Kamala Harris poses to Donald Trump in this case?
Well, this is the first time the American people are going to really see Kamala Harris on stage with President Donald J. Trump. And you're going to hear, I think, a clear contrast of vision and policy records for this country. Under President Trump, we had the most secure border in our nation's history. We had a booming economy supportive of small businesses, U.S. manufacturing, farms, which are important to my district and all parts of New York State. Under Kamala Harris, we've had a wide open border. She's Joe Biden's open border czar. That's why I passed my resolution in the House, which included a couple of Democrats who voted with us condemning her role as Joe Biden's open borders are. And we have inflationary policy that's impacting every family. You go to the grocery store, you talk to small businesses, that those increase in prices because of inflation and because of the reckless spending of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. People feel that, and they know that it's a direct result of Kamala Harris. And then on the world stage, we had peace and security under President Trump. We've had chaos and national security catastrophes under Kamala Harris. Today we had, for example, the 13 Gold Star families who were honored with the Congressional Gold Medal for those 13 service members who lost their lives in the catastrophic withdrawal from Afghanistan. Kamala Harris was the last person in the room advising Joe Biden to do that deadly withdrawal, which was a terrible decision for our national security and put our service members at risk. So I anticipate President Trump will hold her accountable, and the American people are going to have to make a choice. Do we return to the prosperity economically, the peace through strength, strong national security under President Trump, or do we continue on this terrible economy, these inflationary policies, and very weak foreign policy under Kamala Harris?
Are you concerned at all about the age factor now that it's not compared to Joe Biden, which was a factor, now not so much, now that we know that Donald Trump is the oldest candidate in the room?
I'm not concerned about the age factor at all. I mean, I speak to President Trump on a regular basis. He is focused day in, day out on standing up for his America First vision to make America great again and to deliver results to the American people. Kamala Harris, what I'm concerned about is the weakness factor and the fact that when we're facing all these issues with historic inflation, with issues on the world stage, I do not think she is fit to be President of the United States, and I think her record reflects a very far left, the most liberal senator in the United States Senate that's out of touch with everyday Americans.
You talked about agriculture and your district being important in that. Some of Donald Trump's economic policies back to his administration, the tariffs, they had a negative impact on agriculture. And are you concerned at all about him doubling down on that and moving forward here in the next 4 years?
Absolutely. You talk to farmers across my district, they overwhelmingly, up to 90% and more, support President Trump. President Trump
even if some had to get bailed out the last time out by the government?
President Trump supported our farmers, and he passed a farm bill and signed it into law. You had really difficult regulations under the Obama administration prior to President Trump. He lifted those regulations, and most importantly, what do we see under Kamala Harris? We see increased regulations, trillions of dollars of taxes. When she talks about unrealized capital gains tax, you know who that impacts in my district? Those landowners, those farmers, multiple generation family farms. That would be catastrophic. And it's a double whammy when you talk about the regulations from New York State. So farmers, I know when I speak for my farmers, they overwhelmingly support President Trump.
Let's pivot to what's going on here now. You guys just got back in session. There's spending bills to keep the government going. The SAVE Act has been said to be tied to that. Why is this?
It's important to make sure that we have legal and constitutional elections and that illegals are not allowed to vote in U.S. elections. This should be an easy vote. 90% of the American people agree with that. Democrats voted to allow illegals to vote in our elections. That's how radical and out of touch they are. And Kamala Harris has been on record not only wanting mass amnesty, but allowing illegals to vote. It's important to make sure that we, again, ensure the constitutionality and legality of our elections, and this is an important step to do so.
Right now, non-citizens aren't allowed to vote by federal law.
But there
correct?
has been evidence that in multiple cases they have voted, and then you have multiple Democrat governors who have refused to clean their voter rolls. And again, we want to make sure that there is identification that you are you're a U.S. citizen and able to vote in U.S. elections. This is an area 87% of the American people agree with this position.
I think everybody wants a fair election. The evidence you point to, there was many cases that were thrown out, a lot of challenges that didn't show any of that.
That's not the case. There are multiple examples in certain states where the voter rolls have not been cleaned, and the fact is Democrats have to stand by their vote. Democrats wanted to allow illegals to vote in our elections. They're going to have to own that vote in their constituents, and this is one of the many reasons why we're seeing Republicans continue to outpoll Democrats in key swing districts, including in New York State. Look at New York. We have been overrun by illegals. Look at New York City. Look at downstate. Look at my very district. You need to make sure that we are certain that illegals are not voting in U.S. elections. And in New York, let's remember, in New York City municipal elections, it was New York Democrats that wanted to allow illegals. We successfully sued them in court, and that took the New York Republicans to standing up for constitutional issues.
There has been studies by the congressional studies saying this influx would actually help with the economy. Trillions of dollars, and that the mass deportation would have a really negative impact. Is that concerning at all if for some reason there was more border restrictions moving forward and some individuals were taken out and the money that would take to do that? Is that plan is concern at all to you when it comes to having the government work and spending at the end of the day?
No, we need to deport illegals. I strongly support President Trump's border security policies. We know what works to grow our economy, and that was President Trump's not only border security policies, but importantly, his pro-growth economic policies. What Kamala Harris's economic policies are is billions and billions of dollars going to fund illegals. She even supports, she said this on a candidate Q&A form, she wants to use taxpayer dollars for gender reassignments for illegals. Those are hard-earned taxpayer dollars from my constituents who are law-abiding Americans. They don't want amnesty. They don't want to use their hard-earned taxpayer dollars when Americans are struggling. So I absolutely don't buy that argument, and neither do my constituents.
You use the word illegals. Do you think that might be offensive to some
No,
that have come here?
It's a status. That is according to the law. They are illegal aliens. That is the law on the books. They are not here legally.
So while we're talking about the border, you talk to Democrats all the time, and they say, well, Donald Trump scullied the border bill last year. That was going to be presented in the Senate. That was never actually brought to the floor. Is that a possibility still? Because they keep on talking about it, this bill getting there. Is there a compromise there between H.R. 2 and that one? And I guess what is the path forward here? Because it sounds like they still want that one to exist.
Well, the reality is we passed the Secure the Border Act, which returned to President Trump's effective border security policies.
The 2023 one.
We've
right,
also supported multiple bills, for example, deporting of illegals who commit a violent assault against a law enforcement officer, deporting illegals who commit murder. This is very straightforward. Democrats have voted against those bills, for example. That is out of touch with the American people. The most effective way to secure our border is to return to the policies of President Trump. What we know what doesn't work is Kamala Harris's open border czar policies that have been put into place on day one through executive orders and executive actions taken by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And it wasn't just Republicans that condemned her for her open border czar position. It was multiple Democrats who voted for my resolution as well.
We could talk about that for a lot longer, but we'll continue now. Unfortunately, on a sad note, you look at what happened in Georgia last week, the school shooting, calls for gun control once again. Any movement there? Do you think more should be done to help avoid situations like this, especially in schools?
Well, my heart, of course, goes out to any community impacted and particularly families. What I have supported and what has been proven is school resource officers. I've worked closely with the county sheriffs in my district, and this is counties all across my district to ensure that they have the resources and federal grant dollars to increase the number of school resource officers, and that works for suburban schools as well as rural schools as well, and I applaud my county sheriffs for their commitment to school resource officers. We also need to make sure that we have increased mental health support. That's something that Republicans have been very focused on, and it was Republicans that passed Fix NICS, and that was signed into law under President Trump to get rid of the siloing and lack of information sharing from agencies like the FBI and other like military agencies as well, when there are potential mental health issues that need to be shared when it comes to gun ownership. However, most importantly, I represent law-abiding gun owners in my district, and I am proud to have an A+ rating when it comes to standing up for a Second Amendment. And I'm also proud of the votes I've taken in support of school resource officers.
So sweeping reform for something like immigration, which obviously has, impacted the country, but guns for children have become the leading cause of death. Why not a more wide-ranging policy when it comes to that?
Again, I'd point to what we achieved under President Trump, which was pro-Second Amendment, pro-Constitution, as well as closing lack of information sharing between agencies, the Fix NICS Act. We also increased funding for mental health, and that has been very important. We're also increasing funding for our law enforcement to make sure that they have the resources they need to go after criminals who illegally obtain firearms. But my district, we are very proud supporters of the Constitution, and whether you're Democrat, Republican, or Independents, we strongly support our Second Amendment rights. And again, in the case of school resource officers, that has been proven not only a deterrent, but to save lives.
We just saw Mark Molinaro come by, New York congressman, and of course it was 2022 where we saw, the New York red wave, I guess, if you will, that helped tip the scale in a big way in the House. Why is this group special to you? What do you think about them moving forward? Some of the individuals down on Long Island and like Mike Lawler, about people like that.
We We have one of the biggest delegations in the Republican conference in New York. We're very proud of that. We delivered this House majority, so it shows that every New York vote matters when it comes to the control of Congress, and voices were heard. And it was not only a pushback to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's failure, but it was a pushback to Kathy Hochul's failure. I feel very strongly that all of our Republican incumbents will be reelected, whether it's Mark Molinaro, Mike Lawler, the folks on Long Island, or Brandon Williams in upstate in the Syracuse region. They're working hard delivering results for their district, and I've been proud to be the longest serving New York Republican and helping have the resources to get out the vote, to communicate with their voters with all they've done every single day.
Here leading that charge, right? As a woman in this role, it's got to mean something to you too, for that group in particular.
Yes, I'm friends with them all. Many of them I've known for a long time, for well over a decade. I mean, Mark Molinaro I know very well when he ran for governor. He is a dedicated elected official who has a long record of delivering results. And I'm proud to be one of the leaders in our delegation, and I'm proud to cultivate the next generation of leaders coming up. But I never envisioned 10 years ago that I would be the longest serving New York Republican. But it's really important. This is the first time New York Republicans have had a seat at the leadership table in over 100 years. It is important to make sure that those New York Republicans have a voice, and I'm proud to do that.
Congresswoman Stefanik, we really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Hit the subscribe button right now so you can stay up to date on these news-making conversations about the issues impacting New Yorkers the most: power and politics.